But I genuinely feel like when you look at most social media, millennials are messed up. Let me see if I can pull up this story. Let me see if I can try and find a story. We're going to jump ahead a little bit, and I'll tell you how messed up millennials are. Here we go.
Oh, this
I got this tweet where I wrote, brain rot. It is a woman, and she's 11.6 million views. She posted on her TikTok, lost a patient today. And then she's like, she set up the camera, she's filming herself, she leans up against the wall, shake it off, you have 5 more hours. She's a nurse or whatever, or a doctor, I don't know, maybe a fancy doctor. And this right here is in my opinion, the problem with everything. It's not just millennials. It's the younger generation on social media. They're all doing this. They are desperate for validation and attention. And so everything about their lives is fake, made up. This is very scary. Right, so we saw some tragedies take place in a couple cities, Philadelphia and in Highland Park. And why does that kind of thing happen? Well, we often talk about it. These guys want their name in the news. They want to be on TV. They want people to know who they are. They want to be a part of history. They're often loners on antidepressants, things like that. So it all makes sense. No one is giving them the time of day. Humans are social creatures who crave social interaction. This is on the same wavelength, totally opposite ends. Like, okay, some lady made a fake video where she pretended to mourn and it's very vapid and all that stuff. Fine. She didn't go out and hurt anybody, so they're very, very different. But there's a similar thread stitching these things in that they will do whatever it takes to get those likes on social media so that they can feel validated because they don't have the mental fortitude to feel good about themselves on their own. This is the millennial generation. Gen Z is very similar. All of these, I remember I went to VidCon, I think it was like 2016. And there were these little kids. So this is 8 years ago. Or 6 years ago. This is crazy. There were a bunch of little kids. And as I'm walking past them, one goes, how many followers do you have? I have 43. And he goes, I got 82. You have 82 followers? And I was like, those kids are going to be messed up. That's where we're going.
Gary Vee will tell kids that. Don't worry about the number of followers you have. Focus on the quality and having fun and being happy and making things you like.
But this video is a perfect example of why the country is imploding. And it really, really is. Think about it. What we see with virtue signaling, the woke people, Ellen Page, you better delete that viral trend because you said the wrong name. Yo, 99% of people, I guarantee you, if you walk down the street in any major city and said, do you know who Alyte Page is? They'd be like, no. And if you said, do you know who Ellen Page is? They'd be like, oh, yeah, from X-Men. Like, did you know that it's bigoted to say that name? They'd be like, I had no idea. Yet those people would innocently go on Twitter and say something like, big fan of Ellen Page in those movies. She is super cool. And then banned, not allowed. That's happening because these people are like, I'm going to get attention. Here's a really good example. Did you guys see that? What's his name? Griffin Green? Did you guys hear about this guy? You heard about him, right? No. Bodega Bro.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know his real name. So, I only knew Bodega Bro.
Bodega Bro. So there's this dude. This is an amazing story. He moves to New York for a job, and he's this really kind of like, I don't know what the right word is, doofy? Like, it's like an endearing kind of general ignorance.
Okay.
I'm not insulting him. I'm saying he just didn't understand New York, so he's
probably a good thing to be ignorant of.
For sure.
New York City.
But so he's walking around and he's like, I'm trying to find a grocery store in New York. I can't find anything. And he's like, Google Maps keeps sending me to these places. And he's like, yo, what's going on? And it's like, they're making sandwiches. It's a bodega. Someone reported him to his company and they're like, are you going to employ this person? So they fire him. People get mad at this dude who reported him. And so then that dude makes a video where he's like, I'm being harassed on the internet. You have no idea what it feels like when people are coming after you. And it's like, bro, you just did this. These people, their brains are putty. It's mush. They're going on social media and they're like, I'm going to get attention by tattletaling on someone. And then it's just a big swarm of people flinging crap at each other. Yeah. All for the sake of getting more clicks, getting more attention, to the point where, someone died. I don't actually know if someone died. She could be faking it. But you're going to be wearing your scrubs, frame your camera, get it set up, press record, look back, check your hair, stand back, and then go, oh, someone died.
It's the same callousness and indifference to human life.
I think really what's happening here, to me anyway, my impression is that we've really just commodified connection, which is something that ultimately we really need. Like you said, we are social creatures, so all humans need connection. And so as our technology gets more and more advanced, that is supposed to ironically bring us together more and more, we are ironically being sort of forced apart more so, and especially since the pandemic. So, combine that with the American tendency to, this is going back to my college days of sociology classes that I took on like our American cultural roots of being cultural roots in Calvinism and Puritans and that kind of stuff, that like they would look for signs of being part of the saved, the part of, going, exactly, the elect, reaching salvation and whatnot. So they would look for signs for that being like, signs of wealth. It means that you're not spending your money. It means that you are accumulating your wealth. It means that you are working very hard, very diligently. So those were all virtues. So we just as a culture, from our very, very cultural early historical underpinnings, we have had a long tradition of sort of commodifying our virtues. So it makes a lot of sense that in the age of social media, in the age of likes and subscribes and shares, that's the way that we'll view those virtues of having connection, having a personal connection with other individuals. And especially like a clip like that has a lot of emotion involved in it. I mean, we're talking about death, we're talking about grief. That is a pretty strong, I guess you could say, force for somebody to want to give some kind of connection to that kind of emotion.
I think you're right about the commodification of virtue and all that stuff, but there was a unified message in this country. So that commodification was mostly unified, a single track. When the Dixie Chicks, I think it was, do you know who the Dixie Chicks are?
Yeah.
You do? Okay. When they came out, I think they criticized the war, right? That's what happened?
Yeah, the war in Iraq.
George W. Bush, and then it was a bad thing. You can't.
They got canceled.
Yeah.
They got canceled.
Now
they're just called
to go by the chicks.
Yeah, now they're just the chicks.
Then we were joking. Me and Brett were joking that like you can't call women chicks anymore, so they're just gonna be the.
You can't. It's offensive. But back then, even though most, like you had Democrats and Republicans, and you had a big anti-war movement, the mainstream narrative was don't rag on the soldiers, or criticism of the war was criticism of the soldiers. Something happened, and I think it has a lot to do with the internet, where a divergent culture emerged. We split, and two markets developed. You had a market for angst and wokeness, and you had a market for opposing it, free speech, liberty, freedom, all that stuff, kind of where we ended up. And then that market split. It probably could have been stopped if in the late 2000s someone came out and was like, yo, we're hard forking here as an American culture, but no one did anything. So American culture forked, and I think it has a lot to do with in cities, with the internet, messaging spread so rapidly that the left dramatically changed their position faster than the right could keep in line with it. There's a good example, I can maybe pull it up in a second, from the New York Times, where it shows in 2008, the left veers off like that and the right just keeps going. When that happened, you end up with tens of millions of people, all with money, creating a massive market opportunity for woke virtue signaling. That will never stop. So at this point, I would say, I was wondering, like, how do we stop the country from collapsing? Like, what are the real solutions? And I don't want to say it's black pill to think this. I think it's more realism. You can't, and the reason is, there is money to be made if you are woke. There is money to be made if you are anti-woke. This means that market forces and political forces necessitate the expansion of messaging in favor of these two massive groups.
You could disincentivize money and focus more on goods and services. I think that's something that could keep us together. It's how do we get the grain from Kansas around the country so we can all eat?
That, and I mean, there's also the possibility that people get oversaturated by it. And people get tired of it. And then eventually they want to find something that is a little bit more moderated.
I just watched a documentary on BuzzFeed yesterday. I think it was yesterday or the day before. And how they were really spearheading this, what you were calling a commodification of what you call it, hate or whatever. Yeah. But like 2012, 13, it's like identity politics. They'd be like, 25 things that black people can identify with, 12 things that women really want, 18 things a gay man can get down with, and you're like, all of a sudden it's like a black gay man, and then this hate gets involved, like 4 things that women just can't stand, and then the Boston bombing, people are profiting off of the news. Anyway, I could go on about this.
I want to break that down. I want to show this real quick and then explain what Ian is saying. So this is what happened to the political center from the New York Times, and you can see in 2008, the left, the Democratic Party, look at that chart. Just look at that. The blue line shooting super far left. You see where it says median party? That's the median party of Europe. So the United States, for some reason, in 8 years, became left of center for European political parties, which are already relatively far left. Now, of course, the left will look at that and say, oh, see, we're only center left. The Republican Party's far right. And it's like, no, that's American culture. You can disagree with it. But this shows the left went far left relative to where Americans are. And I'll tell you how it happened. As Ian was pointing out, BuzzFeed was creating articles where it was like about black people, about gay people. Those were buzzwords. The algorithm would latch onto words and then pump them out. And what happens, I remember this, man. You guys probably remember this too. I don't know if you remember this. All the police brutality videos, that's all Facebook was. It was like you'd go on Facebook and it was just endless videos of police brutality, rap songs about police brutality. That's all it was. So what happens is you get companies like BuzzFeed where they're like, hey, we got 1 million clicks on that police brutality video. Why? Well, because people don't like injustice. Then they were like, hey, I made an article that was talking about police brutality and racism. It got twice as many views. So they start cramming all the different keywords as possible into as many articles as possible. And then you get intersectional feminism.
And it's not, and then they'll be like, hey, there's no racist, violent things that happen today. What's our next article going to be? It's not that they're going out there and creating the racist violence necessarily, but there is an incentive to see more racist violence. And you will literally, as a someone that does that stuff, hope for something like that to happen so that you can make a lot of money off it. It's fucking sick.
So here's the fight. Here's the political battle. Can you pull this back up, the New York Times thing? If you are in the middle of the road from 2000, let's say you weren't a Democrat, you weren't a Republican, you were a moderate, you're in between. You likely did not get pulled far left along with the Democratic Party. You probably floated somewhere in the middle like this, like me. Maybe to a certain extent, a bit like Ian or a bit like Joe Rogan or Elon Musk. So now, if you were in the middle, the Republican Party, well, they're kind of right-wing compared to where I am, but the left, I can't even see where they're at. So this is what happens. There was a tweet from Libby Emmons about how the Democrats went so pro-abortion that a lot of people just were like Democrats were like, yo, I'm out, and they lost the fight. They had no support anymore. And then I see this on Twitter, the commodification of virtue. The centrists are just far right. The center has moved far right. The moderates are being radicalized. And I'm just like, if you are in the Democratic Party and you veered that far left, you don't think you moved. You're the same normal person you've always been.
It's like if you go underwater and then you look up at people on the surface, you're like, everyone's blurry now.
Exactly.
But like, dude, that's because get out of the water and everyone's still normal, man.
So here's the issue, though. These people, they built a following. They've got millions of followers. They can't just stop. CNN, they used to cover the news. Now it's just Orange Man bad all day, every day, January 6th, and whatever they can milk out of it. If CNN comes out now and says, we're going to go back to reporting the news, no one will watch them because they'll lose the zealot fans they got, and they already lost the news fans. They lost them a long time ago. So they have no choice. It's an addiction, and they've done it to themselves.
Yeah, I was just thinking that I think an important factor in that is the actual emotional addiction, or maybe not emotional, but the addiction that some people actually have to these emotions that they feel with regard to these various stories. Rage is a big one. What's her face that when she testified in front of Congress about Facebook. This was, I don't know how many months ago. She was supposed to be working on their their election.
Whistleblower?
Yeah. The Facebook whistleblower.
Quote unquote.
Yeah. But she was talking about that, how she had said that there was some kind of studies. I'm really reaching back without having looked at this after months, but she was saying that was one of the big issues is that people were actually they were showing signs of addiction to rage. And so it's like, how do you get somebody off of that sort of a substance when it's everywhere and there's every incentive for them to continue profiting off of it?
Well, so there are Dave Rubin's got this, Joe Rogan's got this, I've obviously got this. There are people who take clips out of context on purpose because they know there's a market for tribal rage.
Yeah.
So we try to have people on the left on this show, and we've had a few, but I would say the overwhelming majority of them won't come on. They'll cancel, they'll refuse, or they'll use it to rally their base because they're virtue signalers. So there's one guy in particular who's like, oh, come on. And then when we actually were like, okay, sure. He privately says, I'm not actually doing it. Then goes to his fans and blames me for not allowing it. And now uses that to rile them up and say, see what I told you? And it's crazy because I'm like, yo, we genuinely tried to have some of these people on, and they legit spit on us and laughed and said, now we're going to make money off you. Then they go to their base and say, they were the actual bad guys. So this is the crazy thing. We are trying to get those people out of the cult. They think we're in the cult. But these are the people who believed Jussie Smollett. These are the people who believed Russiagate. These are the people who believed Hands Up, Don't Shoot. These are the people who believed the Covington kid story. These are the people who believed Ukrainegate. These are the people who believed the Very Fine People hoax. These are the people who never once stopped to actually check the evidence themselves. And there are many of them. And they have money. And their money is easily parted from them by these people. That is the big challenge. And so long as there are these prominent left-wing personalities who will pander to them, there's going to be a division that is moving us towards catastrophe. Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.